that higher purpose of it where we'll be damned if we just put that on our kids without putting up a fight first.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. I think that what you gentlemen do is so powerful and so important, because if you look at the pattern of, Soviet Union, for example, they did not allow films like this that oppose the narratives of socialism, of Marxism, to thrive. And the reason why is because, I mean, there's a great show, honestly. I forgot what it's called. I think The Man in the High Castle or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. And so if you know what I'm talking about, there's a reason why they were trying to get those films away from people, because seeing something, it's one thing to read something, but when you visually see it, it's powerful, it's incredible. And, so I really admire what you guys do. And I think that the more people like you guys, and the more film being pushed out, the more that we can fight this warfare like Simon was talking about.
Yeah. I was thinking deeply a few months ago about this, the fact that we have the ability to stream or to access any part of any movie that we want at any point in time. It's really incredible. It's time traveling. You're literally time traveling, and we have the ability to stop time and fast forward time and rewind time. Like that is so incredibly, that's so incredible, because before we had video content, we had audio. Before we had audio, people would translate what happened through stories and through narratives and through songs, and you'd have to memorize them. And you'd only have so much in your brain that you can memorize. And now we have this ability to go to this archive and watch these documentaries. And I think we're going to look back on this time and say, what in the hell happened? But the only reason that we'll know, or that we can see, is that we'll have video from people like you two that are making this stuff, showing people in the future what's happening right now. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And I think, because we're dealing heavily with so much information warfare, it makes it really compelling to be able to catch our enemy red-handed. It really is quite striking for people.
And they hate that.
They hate it. They really don't like it. Like, for example, the whole notion of cultural Marxism is a very easy example to point to, because you can actually find the old Wikipedia entry where it admits that cultural Marxism is real, and you can read it, and it outlines that cultural Marxism is this evolution of Marxism that focuses on identity and culture and all this stuff. And then you can go and see the new version of cultural Marxism on Wikipedia that says it's a far-right anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Just putting those side by side, right there, it reveals the warfare to people. It's why, I'm so inspired by memes and mimetic warfare. Sometimes I'm like, I could make a film, or I could just make a meme about this, because sometimes that's like the best way,
It really
And I think there's been a lot of investment in trying to stop memes and meme warfare. There's military departments that are actually focused on this. There's entire strategic operations and AI technologies that they've launched to try to stop the impacts of memes. And I think that really speaks to what we can do when we take films and we lay things side by side and we say, here's what really happened. Like you said, it's not just for the people now, but we're hoping to keep a historical record that people in the future can look back upon and really understand what was going on, what the struggle was really like, and how they manipulated people specifically.
Yeah, one of the best things I've seen in a while is there's a meme about this. So it says $1 billion corporate campaign, free meme, and the meme destroyed the $1 billion campaign. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Well, that's what's powerful about what you guys do, to be honest, too, because like what Simon said, you guys basically create mini docs all the time with your shorts, with your memes or whatnot. Because I mean, that's basically what it is. It's a couple people chatting like this. It's some B-roll and whatnot, and the reason why a lot of us are still into docs is because with your movement and everything. That's why I tune into you guys. You guys reach a lot of people, and then there's still the another faction of the audience that still goes to movies. So as long as we all do our part, I mean, that's where we actually become really powerful, and that's anyone who's thinking about it, don't wait, that's God whispering to you, saying get up off your ass and join this. If you even just feel a little burning that maybe you should get involved somehow, it's important because like I said, it's what's going to determine the next few years and decades
Yeah,
for our country.
it really is. And sorry, guys. By the way, we are also streaming live on X at the Breakaway account, Breakaway_USA. We're streaming on Rumble, Breakaway USA, and on YouTube as well. But YouTube, we might be on today or tomorrow. Who knows with YouTube? So X and Rumble are the places that that you should check us out at. So so you can keep scrolling as well as watch what's happening right here.
Yeah.
Well, actually, David was actually born in. You were born in, or your parents are from the USSR, right?
Yeah, my parents. So my parents were born in the Soviet Union, and they were born both in like the late '60s. But you know, their parents, my grandparents, you know, '30s, mid '40s, born in USSR. So they've experienced everything, and I've heard the craziest stories that you can think about from Soviet Union, and you know, to the point of where like my great grandma, I think, yeah. So my grandma remembers being little and watching her mom cry in the kitchen when I believe either Lenin or Stalin died. And yeah, it was Stalin, obviously, not Lenin. And you have to think about it, like knowing what Stalin did to the population, and the fact that you have people who cried after his death is just one small thing that you can think about when you have to realize what Marxism really does to people, what a communist style
It's brainwashing.
does essentially, yeah. And
Yeah.
It's crazy. And you know, one of the stories that I always hear from my parents is that when they first made it out of the Soviet Union, so about 88 or 89, the border again opened up for the second time ever, and they're like, all right, we're out. Because they only opened up one time before that in '79, and then it closed again for 10 years. So they knew they had to get out, and they got out. And they went to Europe first, where they were waiting for their turn to go to another country. You could either go to America or you could go to Israel. That's what Jews were able to do. And they were in Austria, and my mom walked into a grocery store to just get some things or whatever. And that was the first time that she said that she saw true colors, because in Soviet Union, not only is everything so old, so expired, but there was no creativity or them allowing you to be creative, really, or to express yourself, your identity, because everything's again about collectivism there. The jeans even weren't blue there. And she said she walked in and she saw, like, you know, like on the aisle, like pieces of candy, like bright colors, something that she hasn't ever seen her whole life.
Yep.
And it's just like small examples of like what life is under socialism, what life is under a communist government.
Yep.
And the fact that you have idiots, these useful idiots around college campuses, and then professors, and not just them, walking all over America saying, we need that here in America because it's going to be different this time. Mind blowing.
And my family also came from Cuba, communist Cuba. So like you said, David, when the border opened, they left. That's the same thing when Castro was like, he basically said, look, if you don't want to be in this beautiful country, get out of here. And my grandpa worked for 5 years on a farm to earn enough money to fly the whole family to America. That was in '68. And then so many Cubans started leaving. Castro was like, oh, no. Okay, border closed, done. So anyone that didn't get out during that tiny little gap couldn't get out. And I would have never been born, and we would never have this conversation that we're having now, which is pretty incredible to think that's how the world works. And it's all the stories that you're saying, David, is the same stuff that I've heard, and I think that's why some people who are descendants of people that grew up in communist countries are some of the people fighting hardest against this, because we understand the stupidity and the idiocy and what it does, and the death and destruction. It's not some pretty picture that's been painted in a cool book with a guy that's been, dramatized to be this incredible leader. These guys were idiots. Like Mao Zedong, just as a perfect example, how stupid the guy was. The guy told everyone in China, we're going to have a great leap forward. And he said, we're going to rival America and Russia in terms of production capacity. Well, the idiot said, look, the crows are eating all the crops. So what I want you to do, population, everyone in China, is chase the crows until they have no chance to rest. We want you to kill the crows. So you have these brainwashed communists that were literally outside. Imagine just hundreds of millions of Chinese people chasing birds all day long, to kill them. And what happened was the idiot didn't realize that the birds help pollinate the seeds. So the next year there was a massive famine, and millions and tens of millions of people died. And these people still, they were so brainwashed that they still allowed him to take power again later on, a few years later. That's how communist brainwashing works. You can kill tens of millions and they'll still believe what, this crap coming out of your mouth.
You know what's
I would
crazy?
say that,
All of this these are not new ideas. This was taken from classic play from Soviet Union, where they did the exact same thing. They weaponized science and they said, oh, let's try these experiments. And in reality, what happened is that right after you had these crazy famines that would end up wiping 10, 20, 30 million people. So I remember reading about the red sparrow. But yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's you bring up the comparison of the birds and whatnot, and how silly that sounds, and it's absolute like idiocy, and yet we just came out of 2 years of putting like masks on our faces for no damn reason. I mean, like literally anti-science. That I mean, and let's be honest, it was a majority of our population who got duped into that. I mean, we are a fraction of a fraction that refuse to do so. So I mean, it's one of those things, and that's what we try to do is we say like, look, it's not even just them who are the idiots. I mean, we literally just witnessed it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%. It's interesting. I've been listening to the audiobook of Xi Van Fleet's new book. So she's a survivor of communist China. And I mean, her story is so incredibly compelling. I really, I highly recommend her work to everyone. But, she talks about the inability to think, that when she got to America and started going to American schools, they were actually asking her to think for herself. And she didn't know how to do that because she had spent her time in school memorizing Mao's Red Book. And so she actually explains how it took her years to actually develop the capacity to have her own thoughts, to be in the educational environment of the West. I mean, it's like that. To hear that is so mind-boggling, but it's really powerful. And it's one of the things that I think it really disrupts the people trying to promote communism now, all these new, like you said, useful idiots. I noticed a pattern. I mean, in all the dissent that I see them putting out, they normally try to attack, American thought leaders that are anti-communist. They don't seem to have a good response for the people that actually escaped communism and are talking from real direct experience. It's so much harder for them to shut down. And so I think those stories are especially powerful, like Xi Van Fleet's her whole like rise into notoriety is incredible because she was not someone who normally spoke out, but saw Marxism and communism in the schools and was just, she said, I had to say something. And she was pushed into it. This is a woman who never would have said anything. She would have just been a quiet American citizen.
Yeah. Yeah. When we were at Amfest, there was a big booth, and I forget the name. I wish Michael was on, but they were basically trying to take down the CCP. So there are a lot of people that fled China and now live here, and they have this media company, and they broadcast all over China, so anyone with a VPN can watch it. And they were live streaming Amfest. They basically show what's happening here and say, look, this is what a free country looks like, obviously compared to China. And they're trying to convert people, but they have to do it so silently because the government of China is making everyone get DNA tests so they know exactly who is your family tree. And this is the sadistic part. If you speak out against the government, they don't need you to tell them who your family is. They already know from your forced DNA test, and they can go get everybody in your family and do anything they want to them. That's what we're facing if we keep going down this path. And China, meanwhile, is laughing because this already happened in China in the 60s. And nowhere in China do you see gays, lesbians, nothing. There's no trans in China. They don't allow it because they already took control. The trans and the gay, the people pushing for this stuff are the ones that are going to be the first to get annihilated when this actually is enacted. Because as a dictatorship, this communist dictatorship, the last thing you want is anyone that speaks out and that you can't control.
So they're called useful idiots. They help usher in all of this in. And then the second that they realize what the hell they actually ushered in, these are the ones that brought it in. So they're going to be the most radical ones to try and drive it out. They have to go
Yep.
first. And it's always funny. I mean, Yuri Bezmenov obviously talks about that, but even without watching him talk about that, you can see that happen in all of these different societies and styles of government. So you have to go.
Steve,
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, what kind of feedback have you gotten in terms of, aspects of this communist influence that people didn't really realize till they saw the film? Have there been particular things that have popped out for people, or, parts of the film that really shook people into a greater state of awareness than they had expected?
Absolutely. And the nice part is I can't take credit for any of that because I just sit back there with the camera and I let people like Lisa Logan, who, if you don't know who she is, find her on X. She's literally exposing some things within the last few days, within the last few weeks, about literally how they're doing it through the U.S. and they're doing it through our own government and whatnot. And she's literally showing the documents there on her X and whatnot. James Lindsay, for example, like he's able to dissect it and go after it better than probably anyone else out there right now.
Yeah.
And that's why he just came off of the circuit from being on every major podcast there is because of his ability to do it. Glenn Beck said he was the most important interview that he's ever done was with James Lindsay because like I said, you hear that a lot. You hear, oh, Marxism has infiltrated our schools and whatnot. But literally, and you know this, Fabian, like James will break it down and show you the math problem that they're using in order to get the Marxism to get started within the classroom. So, I mean, he's able to go to it on that level where parents can actually recognize what it is. Alex Newman, I mean, he's another one. He will just all those guys are able to actually expose things that haven't been like I said, it's very common to say like, oh, communism, it's infiltrated socialism and everything like that, but like these guys are able to actually give you living breathing examples of it. And I would say probably the feedback that we've gotten is almost it's very disturbing to a
Yeah.
lot of people. They don't know where to begin. We talk about solutions, but it's almost like they need a few hours or a few days or a few weeks after watching the movie of really letting it absorb. And then I have had people contact me who have seen it and they're like, all right, we're taking our kids out.
Yeah.
We knew taking our kids out of public school.
Yeah.
And
We have a question actually regarding that. So they asked, yeah, what do we do or think to people who are still not awake to this reality of what is going on and choose not to look? So let me read it again. What do we do or think to people who are still not awake to this reality of what is going on and choose not to look? You want to take that, David, or someone?
I'll
is
start with the fact.
slapping allowed or
I would start with the fact that there's three aspects. There's political, economical, and social. And you have to figure out which one of those matter the most to you and start to really target that factor. Because if you can't really wait, they're infiltrating all three of those aspects. So if you want to start to open up people's minds to it and kind of like show them what's going on, you have to pick something that you're actually pretty good at. So if it's politics, economics, social, whatever. But I mean, it's a hard question because if you should just show them films, honestly, that's probably my best best thing about it. And because the films do the best thing that they can. For example, a lot of people on the left, they can't stand the book Atlas Shrugged because it forces them to abandon their progressive mindset. It forces them to abandon collectivism and makes them be confronted with objectivism. For those who've never read Atlas Shrugged, people on the left, when you ask them the question, who is John Gold, they either don't know what to answer because they've never read the book, or they can't stand that question because they know that it completely destroys their progressive mindset. So I feel like that's what films really do, in a sense. They kind of destroy narratives, ideas that people have been sold to. So I feel like that's what you need to do. Bring them towards something that is easy to grasp. And films are the best thing you can do, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that, like, you know, I've been in the I guess the conspiracy theorist label for a long time now. I've been challenging official narratives and being censored for like a decade at this point. So there was a point where where I that I hit in my process when it became clear to me that you really can't take personal responsibility for other people's awakening. That's a bit of a losing game. And the best way that I found to see this is when you really deeply reflect on your own awakening of like what's going on, you see that there was a sort of, a web of meaning that formed by you experiencing different things coming together and different relationships and things arriving at the right time for you to have those aha moments that were correct for you. And when you think about the amount of synchronicity and relationship and information all correctly coming together for you to truly understand what's going on, that becomes something that's almost impossible to curate specifically in a forced way for an individual. I think the best thing that we can do is look at this more like you want to, curate like a garden. You want to create an environment that nurtures people's awakening, right? You want to create the conditions for people to wake up, but not try to be a forceful, someone who creates a kind of force and pressure to try to make someone wake up. You need to create the conditions that enable that. So that's the way that I look at it. So personally, I try to create content and have conversations that nurture people's awakening, but I don't try to take it on myself as like a personal responsibility, because I really don't think that that's how it works, just based on my experience.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, because they're both absolutely right on all of those accounts, and I would say one of the most effective things, like exactly what he said, you can't control what others do. It's just what you can control is your own life. And so a lot of people on our side are almost just as guilty as leftists, where they can't articulate our arguments, and you have to develop a core belief system of principles, not just based around what Tucker Carlson said, or which is, he says great things, but you have to know why he says the things he says. So you have to study, and then I would say, like, live those principles. I know so many of us, it's we're all right wingers until it's easy to become a control freak, or we're all right wingers. So, like, though, I mean, even on a day-to-day basis, I know people who will actually, in one arena of their lives, they're right, and then as soon as there's an opportunity, they will go left, and it'll just be kind of hush hush. I would just say, don't be a hypocrite and live those principles. And then, like, there's a spiritual aspect about it. uh Christ, and not to get all preachy or whatnot, but like, the way he was able to convert so many people is he literally just served them. He served and he served and he served, because then when they were ready, they knew that they could follow him and they wouldn't be judged for it, that it would be a space of like love and welcoming, rather than being like bitch slapped once they change their mind. So I would like, love thy neighbor,
Yeah.
like it's right up there with the greatest of commandments. So I would say, like, live your principles, and then find a way to serve the people who don't know better. And I will say that because when I was a kind of just a, I don't know, a Bush Republican. I didn't have those core values. Anytime I talked to a libertarian and they would just be super aggressive and and start calling me a warmonger, I would shut
Yeah.
down. But I did have a mentor and a friend who literally just like piecemealed it to me. He put things in my head, and after several years, all of a sudden, I was like, "Whoa, okay, there is more
Yeah.
to this." Like. But yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. I mean, at that time, things weren't what they were today. So
right.
it's we've been given the problem because it's right in front of our eyes every time we step out the door or we turn the news on. That's the problem. We understand it. So whereas before, someone would have to convince you that there's a problem with the world that you may not even see. Now you see it everywhere. So they've done us the benefit, I guess you can call it, in that they've given us this overwhelming problem that's in front of everyone's face. Personally, to answer that question that that person asked earlier is, almost refrain from telling people what they should know or what they should believe, and I ask them questions to allow them to arrive to it themselves. So David and I have spoken about this quite a few times. It's the Socratic method, which I think is incredible. So it's very easy. You first of all, you need to know what you believe, because if you're not strong in your convictions, then how are you going to go and convince someone else if you don't even know what you believe, right? And when I do that, I'll just ask someone. I'll ask a very simple question that's almost impossible to disagree with, because you want to get them to start saying, yeah, you know what, I do agree with you. And an easiest question that you can ask someone is something like, do you like what do you think about the world? Do you think it's going in a better position? Do you think it's better than it used to be? Or like, do you think it's getting better? And if the question is like, no, it's getting worse, perfect. Now we agree on something. Well, why do you think it's getting worse? Like what specifically? And then you get them talking. It's almost like a therapy session,
Mhm.
right? And then they will point out things that in their lives they think are wrong. And then you can pick one of those items that you think you have the best chance of getting deeper into, and then start talking about that. So if it's like David said, some people are better at talking about economics, politics, social issues. So you just have a conversation with people and you let them open, instead of like telling them right away, like, you need to do this, because they're going to close up like a clam and you're never going to reach them whatsoever. So whenever I have trolls in my comments, people say things, and I love trolls. I love when people comment stupid things. My response is always like, how so? Because they'll make a statement that's opposite of what I say, and I ask them, well, how so? Like, what do you mean? Like, why are you right? And typically, you'll never get an answer. And if they start, you know, answering back to you, I just invite them on my podcast. That's it. I'm like, well, you know what? You have great views. I respect that you think that way. Why don't you come on and just tell me why I'm wrong? Never happens, but at least now they're thinking.
They never
Yeah.
like to come, show why show us why they're thinking like this and whatnot. But yeah, you're right, Fabian. If you want to just crack some ideologies, or bring them to the water, essentially, just ask those questions, because it gets them thinking. And when they can't provide an answer to something, that's when they're really starting to think, and it's really powerful.
And these cults don't want you to think or have critical thinking skills. That's the worst, because you have ideas and you're like starting to question things, and they don't like that. It's a cult.
Yeah, I mean, what we're really looking at is free thought, is the ability to think freely. And that is an issue on both sides. It's something that both left and right struggle with. Like free thought is this ability to have thoughts using logic, reason, and empiricism without relying on dogma, authority, and tradition. That's the definition of free thought. So, one of the major things I see on both sides is, it's like you said, certainty. When people feel very certain because they saw a really powerful Tucker Carlson clip, that certainty, it's problematic because they haven't arrived upon that themselves. And one of the things that people forget is that to arrive upon a principled position, you have to go through a certain amount of doubt. You have to be uncertain for a time. You have to struggle with what is going on. You have to have a struggle so that you pass through doubt, and then you come to trust the foundation of your own position over time. And I find that this is, one of the things that is influencing people so deeply is this pressure to be certain about what's going on, this pressure to have a very strong opinion about something without going through your own process of doubt and inner struggle to get to that place. And people don't realize, they see a clip of someone speaking very powerfully and they want to mimic that, but they don't recognize that that person, that thought leader, got to that principled position through doubt first, through uncertainty first. And like, it's just such an important thing for people to understand.
Yeah. One thing that really helped me was I tried to put myself in a position. So let's say who's the opposite of what we believe in? Let's just say a globalist, right? Somebody who wants to control, take all the sovereignty from countries, put us all in digital shackles. So let's say that you agree. Let's say that you think like a leftist does, super leftist. Like, I want to give all power to the state, everything. Well, okay, let's say, boom, it happens. We're a communist country. All the power, all the property is owned by the state. What are you going to do on day one? Everything you want has been implemented. Everything is we're all communists. What now? What do? You wake up and then what do you do? What kind of world is that? And if you put yourself in those shoes, you're not working. Well, you're working, but you're a slave. You can't own anything. So, hey, you want to buy something? Nope, can't do that. You got to wait till the state gives it to you. Okay. Well, okay. So now what do? I'm sitting there. I can't buy anything. Can I go online? I mean, maybe, but they're going to tell me what I have to watch. That's not a world that I want to live in. So, okay, now I put myself in that position, and I understand that I don't like that. So now I'm pretty sure, like I'm pretty secure in my opinion that that's not the way that the world should work. I think everyone should do that. Just play devil's advocate with yourself and try to convince yourself that that's the way. And if you can't convince yourself, then obviously it's not what you think.
I think the big problem here, though, is that we're forgetting that Marxists reject this logic. You know, they essentially don't really think that far. And I would also say that they're demoralized to the point of where they don't, even if they thought that far, they would believe that that is good. I know that sounds really weird, but I mean, every time I've seen somebody that really advocates for socialism, they deny objective reality most, like 99% of the time. I saw Charlie Kirk debate one of the Young Turks, like socialist, like fanboys, if you would call them that. And every time that they would bring up some reality from socialism, maybe famine, or maybe the fact that 50 million or so died, you know, they denied these objective facts. So I agree, but then if we're talking about somebody that's fully demoralized, fully indulges in this ideological drive, it almost seems like they're just putting their ideology above reality, and that's really scary. So I don't know. I mean, I that's the approach I would take, but how effective is that with these people is something I always question.
Yeah. You really have to gauge how far someone is in the process of ideological subversion. And I think the people who are like long gone, that might be growing, but I think it's still a minority in terms of, you know, what's really out there. I guess that's like a debatable thing, but I think there's a reason the media uplifts the most radical voices and the most ideologically subverted people. I think that's to their advantage. You know, I talk about this often in making Cut. When I was researching the issue of, you know, the explosion of girls transitioning, I found a ton of left-wing people saying I'm politically homeless because I spoke out against this, saying that every time I speak out against this, someone calls me a right-wing extremist, and I'm a lifelong Democrat.
Yep.
You know, like I came up against this again and again, and it's one of the reasons I made that film. I made it with the broad picture of demoralization beyond just the gender affirmative model, and look, demoralization has also meant that teenage girls are exponentially getting more breast augmentations and labiaplasties. So they're cutting up their genitalia just for cosmetic reasons. It has nothing to do with gender ideology. Why is that rising at the same time as the girls getting the double mastectomies and the testosterone injections? It's because there's something apolitical going on here that you have to step back and take a larger look at. When I presented it that way, it actually became more appealing for a lot of people who were on the left, because they were used to right-wing media saying the solution to this is everyone becoming conservative.
Yeah.
And for them, they were never, ever going to accept that argument.
Yeah.
Never, you know?
So Simon King, sorry, someone asked, what's the name of the film you said?
The film is called Cut, Daughters of the West. And then today we're talking about In Sheep's Clothing. Those are the two films we're talking about. But yeah, that film's at daughtersofthewestfilm.com. You can check it out there.
And it's all intentional. They want to emotionally wreck these kids. Yeah. I mean, literally an intentional dumbing down of society is why we're having why there's a lack of resistance with so many.
Yes.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely.
That's actually something that really came through. So in my short film, Canada's Red Shadow, there's this one section that's testimony from a Toronto District School Board whistleblower. And I was only able to fit so much of her testimony into it. But a bunch of the other testimony I have that I'm putting together into some other content, she explains how they're using the woke ideology to just degrade the quality of education. So it's not just that they're trying to get that ideology into the classroom. They're literally trying to destroy the education system so that kids who actually have special needs in the classroom, what they'll do is they'll say, no, you can't say that he's differently abled. He's equivalent to everyone. They're all equal. He's just as good as the other kids. And they use that justification to take away the actual special needs education programs that they had. And so they'll cut that from the budget, but they'll use this neo-Marxist ideology to justify it so that the quality of education is just degrading. And this is what this teacher said. She's like, we're just watching education fail the kids. They have classrooms where they'll have kids who are at like reading levels that are in like multiple different grades. So they'll have a kid who has like a grade 3 reading level, a kid who has grade 4, grade 5, and that's all within like a grade 6 classroom. And the teachers just have to figure out how to teach kids that are at completely different levels because the system is failing them. And it's all this woke ideology that's being used to just totally obliterate the effectiveness of the system as it is.
Yeah, there's a great sorry, I wanted to say this earlier, especially because I have two filmmakers on and anyone listening. One of my favorite movies all time. I randomly saw it maybe like 2005. It's incredible. It's called The Lives of Others. It's about this filmmaker, or he's I think like he writes plays, a playwright in in East Germany, trying to get a play made, and it shows how the police are just wiretapping everything. He has to show it to one of the communist commissars for approval for it to be shown and for it to be played. And he's writing a play that he can't. I mean, I don't want to give a lot away, but it's called The Lives of Others, and it's absolutely phenomenal. It is phenomenal. So I suggest everyone maybe you could just say The Lives of Others online free. It's an older movie, but it's really great in the way it's shot. And I forgot what else I was going to say. I'm sorry. So, but yeah, I'll leave it at that.
To kind of start. So I had a question for what's your name? I forgot already. Beneath the film director for Beneath Sheep's Clothing,
Steve.
Okay, so Steve, here's my question: is that you obviously made a pretty powerful film that exposes, I would say is a better word, the truths behind communism, socialism, Marxism, all these different things, right? Have you gotten any backlash, or has anybody challenged this film yet that is pro-socialism, that is a neo-Marxist essentially, or has that not happened yet since there's been a couple showings so far?
Yeah, it's been pretty. I mean, the only people who have come to the showings have been in our echo chamber. So that will come. Like I don't think I've ever done a project that's worthwhile where the attacks haven't come. I mean, it's a hallmark of doing something righteous is when the attacks come and the debates flood in and whatnots. And the worst part of it is all is they never fight fair. Like they always accuse you of things and whatnot and try to destroy your name. And yeah, so I mean, that's going to be expected. One of the things, and one of the reasons why we've actually delayed the online premiere is I was chatting with the investor and whatnot, and we really want to make this film more approachable to people outside of our echo chamber. Because you guys have mentioned a couple times, it's we all get it for the most part. We might be all on different levels and whatnot, but we want to try and see if we can't turn this into something that even like visually is appealing to people, so almost they don't even realize what they're watching before next thing you know we're knee deep in some pretty heavy ideological arguments and whatnot, and we're trying to shift their perspective on a couple of things. And so yeah, that's gonna come hard and it's gonna come heavy. But the great part is once we get to that point, we're already on to the next project. So, I mean, on to the next battle and whatnot.
Sky says you guys need to set up badges so we can pay for your live feed. Unfortunately, Instagram has banned me from all that stuff because of the content I post.
We need
yeah.
to do it on mine then.
Yeah,
we
can do it on yours. Yeah,
haven't banned me yet.
Yeah. Also, if you guys wouldn't mind adding the breakaway_USA account, it would really mean a lot. We're experiencing tremendous growth. I mean, I'm even blown away by the growth that we've had. We got 500 followers yesterday, and we're almost at 1 million accounts reached for the month. Which is I'm hoping to break that 1 million. Then I'll screenshot it. But you know, a lot of people are seeing what we're doing, and we're just having conversations, real world conversations, not filtered, not without any agenda, just people trying to do good. And I mean, it's incredible to think that people actually like that. Isn't it wild? Right? We're not spending $100 million on a film that's going to convince you that a star, you know, that a star is pretty. We're just talking real world stuff, and we will continue to do that, especially with your support. So fortunately, we don't have badges, but you can add breakaway_USA.
I feel like there's like a really big demand for what we're doing because people, they want authentic stuff. And I feel like there's nothing more authentic just getting on this live, talking to guests, talking about different things people are doing. Nothing is scripted here. It's like people want that stuff. So
yeah, I mean, there's too much fake news, I guess you can call it, fake news, to use a Trump term, out there, and people are tired of it. But also, Simon, someone is asking a question about. I know you brought up this before, Simon, but the go-to retort to homeschooling or unschooling, is that the children that were turn out weird? Thoughts?
Oh yeah, I mean, I would say that's like one of the weakest arguments against homeschooling and unschooling, especially now. So that old argument was based on the idea of, you know, super religious parents keeping their children cooped up because they were afraid of them being exposed to anything outside of biblical teachings. It was kind of a nonsense way of framing homeschooling and unschooling. There's a couple ways to debunk this. Number one, public school is the experiment. It is the new, shortest lived thing. Homeschooling was the way. That is the original approach to education. Number two, it's exploding right now. People are leaving the public schooling system to homeschool and unschool in the millions, which means that your ability to set up pods and local networks create an incredible opportunity for socialization. But then to take that even further, the socialization ends up being a lot more rich because you no longer have children broken up into ages and all separated by their ages. You actually have older kids naturally taking on leadership roles with younger kids. You have the dynamics of learning that occur when children are put together in multiple ages. So that enriches it even more. And then the other thing I'll say is that, you know, the public schooling model, it puts children in an environment of competition that ends up having them actually turn on each other more aggressively. And
Yeah.
we've noticed this very, very strongly, that we've had kids in our unschooling and homeschooling network who, for some reason or another, the parents have had to revert and send them back to the school. And then my son will go and play with one of his old friends who's just spent a year in the public schooling system, and they've become a completely different kid.
Yeah.
They're cruel, they're aggressive, they're competitive in ways that are just kind of like ugly and over the top. It was really sad to see. I saw this in numerous kids within our community. So I would say all of this,
guys,
they debunk.
By the way, we're gonna get shut off because our hour's coming on, like I think a minute and a half. But I don't know if you four gentlemen have any time, but maybe if the people, if you want to see us just to run it back and come back on, please let us know. And I guess the only way that you can let us know is either by commenting or sending a heart on here. I'm not really sure how that works. I'm not a badge guy. I'm banned on pretty much everything. But anyway, I don't know if you gentlemen have any time, but maybe we can, you know, I don't want to cut conversation off when it's going well. So
I guess it's democracy in action, right?
Yeah.
Is what we're looking at.
yeah.
bunch of parts flowing.
All right. Loving the hearts. Yeah, I have dinner in about 20 minutes, but you know, we can get on for another 15 in case we do get cut off, because that's actually a really interesting subject, Simon. And I don't know anything about it, but I mean, as far as the process of you know, how it goes, but I'm a big proponent. You said public school is the experiment, right? Socrates mentored Plato. Plato mentored Aristotle. Aristotle mentored Alexander the Great. Like, people don't know this, but to have a mentor, to have a one-on-one ability to learn from someone is so incredibly important. And we've gotten rid of that, where we've gone from the model of one-to-one, one teacher, one student, to one teacher, 40, 50 students. Like, that doesn't work. how can any student get one-on-one training when you can barely speak to the teacher? It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think in all of this, we're facing all this influence in the schools. Children out of schools is the number one solution. And you can take that very, very far in terms of being of service to your child, creating family legacy. It opens up incredible pathways that people are just starting to conceptualize now that this, homeschooling, unschooling revolution is blossoming. It's massive, and it's one of the biggest solutions out there,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Simon,
Yeah.
I want to ask you is, oh, go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
I was just gonna say when Simon says it's one of the biggest solutions, it literally is, because one of the reasons why they want the kids in schools is